Africa is home to one of the most overlooked religious stories on earth. In Nigeria alone, more than 100 million people identify as Muslim, a population larger than many entire countries. But Islam in Nigeria didn't appear overnight. It arrived slowly, through trade routes, scholarship, migration, culture, and generations of change. So how did this faith spread across one of Africa's most powerful nations? And why is it still growing today? Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to Islam's Light. If this story has touched you, please subscribe and join us on our journey, and watch the full video until the end. The story of Islam in Nigeria begins far north of Nigeria itself, deep in the Sahara Desert. As early as the 9th century, Arab and Berber merchants crossed the desert carrying gold, salt, textiles, and knowledge. Along with trade, they also carried Islam. One of the first major regions influenced by this contact was the Kanem-Borno Empire in northeastern Nigeria. These merchants weren't invading armies. They were traders, scholars, and travelers. Through them, Arabic writing and Islamic scholarship slowly entered local societies. Over time, major Hausa cities like Kano, Katsina, and Zaria became centers of trade and learning. Kano especially grew into something far larger than a marketplace. It became a center of education, law, and intellectual life. But Islam's expansion into southern Nigeria moved much more slowly. Part of the reason was geography. The humid forests of the south were difficult for horses and camels used in trans-Saharan trade. Disease-carrying insects, especially the tsetse fly, made long-distance movement dangerous for animals. For centuries, this natural barrier limited northern influence and helped shape the religious map of Nigeria. Sometimes history is changed not only by kings and empires, but also by climate, geography, and tiny unseen forces. Islam eventually found another route. By the 14th century, Muslim traders from the Mali Empire, especially the Wanyara merchants, began moving into Yoruba land in southwestern Nigeria. The Yoruba people already had sophisticated cities, powerful rulers, and deep cultural traditions. Islam entered this world gradually through trade, diplomacy, and daily interaction. The Yoruba called the new religion Esinamail, meaning the religion of Mali. By the 16th century, mosques had already appeared in major Yoruba cities like Oyo Isle. What made Islam spread successfully here was not military conquest. It was cultural adaptation. Many social structures already familiar in Yoruba society, including strong family networks and polygamous households, aligned naturally with parts of Islamic social life. Islam did not erase Yoruba identity overnight. Instead, it blended into an already complex society. Then came political instability. As the Oyo Empire weakened during the 18th century, warfare and displacement spread across the region. In uncertain times, Muslim scholars and teachers became more influential. They offered spiritual guidance, education, and a sense of order during chaos. Conversions increased, especially among elites and rulers. By the 19th century, southwestern Nigeria had become one of the most religiously diverse regions in Africa, where Islam, Christianity, and indigenous traditions often existed side by side. No figure shaped Islamic history in Nigeria more than Usman Dan Fodio. Born in 1754 in the Hausa kingdom of Gobir, Dan Fodio was a Fulani scholar, teacher, and reformer. He believed many rulers of his time had become corrupt and disconnected from Islamic principles. For years, he preached reform peacefully. Then conflict with local rulers escalated. In 1804, Dan Fodio and his followers left Gobir in a migration known as a hijra, echoing the migration of the Prophet Muhammad from Mecca to Medina centuries earlier. What followed changed West African history. Dan Fodio's movement defeated several Hausa kingdoms and established the Sokoto Caliphate, one of the largest political entities in 19th century Africa. At its height, The caliphate stretched across large parts of modern-day Nigeria and neighboring countries. But the movement was not only military or political. It was intellectual. Dan Fodio and his family produced hundreds of written works on theology, law, governance, education, and ethics. This period transformed northern Nigeria into one of the major centers of Islamic scholarship in Africa. It's a chapter of African intellectual history that many people outside the continent still know very little about. One of the most remarkable figures of this era was Nana Asma'u, the daughter of Usman Dan Fodio. Born in 1793, she was a scholar, poet, educator, and multilingual intellectual fluent in Arabic, Hausa, Fulfulde, and Tamashek. At a time when female education was limited in many parts of the world, Nana Asma'u focused heavily on teaching women. She created a network of female educators known as the Yen Teru movement. These teachers traveled between communities, teaching women about religion, literacy, and moral education. What made her work unique was accessibility. She translated religious knowledge into local languages and poetry so ordinary women could understand and remember it more easily. Her influence survived long after her death in 1864. Today, Nana Asma'u is recognized internationally as one of the most important female Muslim scholars in African history. Her story challenges many assumptions people hold about women, education, and Islamic scholarship in pre-colonial Africa. Islam in Nigeria is not a single unified experience. It is diverse, layered, and constantly evolving. Most Nigerian Muslims are Sunni and traditionally follow the Maliki school of thought. Within that majority, different religious movements and traditions developed over time. Sufi brotherhoods like the Tijaniya and Qadiriya became highly influential through spirituality, scholarship, and community leadership. Later, reform movements like Izala emerged during the late 20th century, calling for a stricter interpretation of Islamic practice and criticizing some Sufi traditions. Nigeria is also home to Shia communities, Ahmadiyya communities, and many independent Islamic organizations. These groups sometimes cooperate, sometimes compete, and sometimes disagree strongly. But together, they form one of the most dynamic Muslim societies in the world. Nigeria's Islamic landscape reflects the complexity of the country itself. Ethnically diverse, politically complicated, spiritually active, constantly changing. Religion in Nigeria is deeply connected to demographics. Nigeria has one of the youngest populations on Earth, and Muslim-majority regions in the north have experienced particularly rapid population growth over recent decades. Researchers in demographic studies show that fertility rates in many northern Muslim communities remained higher than national averages for years. At the same time, urbanization, education, migration, and economic change continue reshaping religious life across the country. Religion in Nigeria is not only about belief. It also affects politics, identity, education, and national power. That is one reason religious population statistics remain politically sensitive. The future of Nigeria may be shaped as much by demographics as by elections or economics. And that future is still unfolding. Today, Islam in Nigeria is no longer limited to mosques, schools, or local communities. It lives online. A new generation of Nigerian Muslims now learns through YouTube lectures, podcasts, live streams, online classes, and global Islamic networks. Organizations like NASFAT help create a more modern urban Islamic culture aimed at students, professionals, and young graduates. At the same time, the Nigerian Muslim diaspora in places like the United Kingdom, the United States, and Canada remains closely connected through digital media. A young Muslim in Lagos can now study with scholars in Cairo, listen to debates from London, and join discussions happening across the world in real time. Nigeria is no longer simply receiving Islamic ideas from abroad. Increasingly, it is exporting its own voices, scholars, creators, and conversations to the global Muslim world. So why is Islam still spreading in Nigeria? Part of the answer is demographic growth. Large families and a young population continue to shape the country's religious future. But demographics alone don't explain 1,000 years of history. Islam spread in Nigeria through trade, scholarship, education, migration, political change, and community networks. It adapted to local cultures instead of replacing them completely. It survived empires, colonialism, economic crises, and modern political tensions. And now, in the digital age, it continues moving beyond borders through phones, videos, social media, and online learning. The story of Islam in Nigeria is not only about religion. It is also a story about Africa, identity, knowledge, power, and cultural transformation across centuries. The caravans that once crossed the Sahara carried ideas slowly across the desert. Today, those same conversations travel instantly across the internet, and the story is still being written. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more stories about history, religion, and civilizations that shaped the modern world. And if this video changed the way you see Nigeria, Africa, or Islam, share it with someone else. Thanks for watching.